Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by telling you what I am not. I'm not a frivolous, entertaining, backslapping, baby-kissing kind of guy. That's just me. I work all the time. When John asked me to go on a boat trip with him as he did this week, to be honest, I'm thinking about all the work I got to do. And I work for other people to help them, and I'm serious about it. And so there's a lot of things I cannot do. I cannot sing, I cannot run. When I start singing and my 9-year-old granddaughter looks at me and says, please don't, I get the message. But what I can do, and I do, is political and legal problem solving. Now, I'm running for Senate again. I served 9 years previously. I was elected in 3 different primaries here. And I'm running again because I want to be a caretaker. I see we have emergency problems that need to be addressed financially here. And I don't want this area to become like New Jersey and Atlanta. And I want to protect my grandchildren and the next generation. And I see what to do. And my philosophy in life is if a bus is about to run over somebody and I can push them out of the way and I don't, it's immoral. So I can't watch all this burn and see what to do and not get in the game. So I'm volunteering to work for you again. The first big threat I see here, serious threat, is excess spending. The think tanks identified me, all 9 years I was a senator, as one of the 3 most conservative senators in the state. 2 years I was the most conservative based on my voting record. That's based on fiscal responsibility, limited government, traditional values. 3 organizations have identified my opponent as getting an F, and less than 1% of the time voting fiscally, responsible, or conservatively. In the last 3 years, our budget has gone up in the state 40%. Now that's 40%. That cannot be sustained. In 2007, Governor Sanford issued 243 vetoes. That would have saved $167 million. My opponent voted to override all of them. In other words, he couldn't find merit in even one of those vetoes, apparently. 2005, there were 163 vetoes. My opponent voted to override all but one of them. That would have saved us $95 million. That means that he voted for all 50 items on the so-called LARD list. Just about $1 million for a green bean museum in Lake City. $150,000 for the Piedmont Pottery Degree Program. $85,000 for Canadian promotions, and $3.9 million for a Florence museum. I would have voted against all of those things. In 2007, on third reading of the budget, Senator McConnell voted against our state budget, and he wrote, as all senators are allowed to do, an explanation of why he voted the way he did. He said he was voting against the 2007 budget because we had $1.3 billion in new money and none of it was being given back to taxpayers. It was being spent. There was no rainy day fund being created from this $1.3 billion. And there were $267 million being spent for one time, which caused reoccurring obligations in the future. Now, Senator McConnell knew to vote against this. My opponent voted for it, for all of it. 2006, Governor Sanford vetoed the entire budget. He pointed out there was a 13% increase in spending, $759 million, and that wasn't sustainable. My opponent voted to override that veto. The competitive grants program is identified by the state newspaper as a, quote, legislative slush fund, unquote. It spent $30 million in the last 3 years. It's got over 2,000 applications for $360 million. That's $1/3 billion pending. And there's $18.5 million going to be spent this year from this legislative slush fund for things like Pigs on the Park Festival, Hilarity Festival. The governor vetoed the legislation for this competitive grants program. My opponent voted to override the veto. I would have voted to kill the whole program. Senator Leatherman got $8.9 million last year from this program. George Dorchester County got $160,000. So my opponent came down here with a check and got the treasurer to cut 10 checks and got his picture in the paper giving out 10,000 or 15,000 at a time. If you do the math, it shows that in order for him to get that $160,000, we had to pay for Senator Leatherman and all these other people to get their money, and it cost the citizens of Dorchester County $420,000. So in other words, we had to pay as a donor county $420,000 to all these other counties for us to get $160,000. I would have voted against it when the governor vetoed it. Now here are the results of this overspending. It's been announced in the last 10 days that we're $130 million in the hole compared to what was anticipated. We don't have as much revenue as expected, which is exactly what Governor Sanford predicted. And $90 million this year. As a result, $1.9 million is being cut out of school buses. The fund for new school buses. We have the worst school bus system in the nation. It's the only school bus system owned by the state. The 2% raise for state workers is being cut. There's a 5.6% across the board cut of our services in our agencies. There's $7 million being cut from economic development. If we had taken that $1.3 billion last year and put it in a rainy day fund and not wasted it, or if we didn't have the competitive grants program where, by the way, the legislature hasn't cut the $18.5 million for this year's competitive grants program. Instead, they have cut $1.9 million for school buses and for economic development. These are misplaced priorities. Another thing that concerns me financially for us is our growth. We're going at the rate of over 5%. When I was a senator, I studied what other states did. You got 49 other states. Growth problems and other problems have been dealt with in those states. I studied what worked in the other states and adapted them to our state. And I, in 4 two-year terms, introduced over 400 bills. Now, some of them didn't pass the first year, they introduced the next year, but 11.4% of those passed. I had so much legislation passed in 2 years that I got an award by a national think tank in Washington as one of 3 outstanding state legislators in the country. That award had never been given to a freshman. This is what I will do as senator if I'm elected. Number one, I will introduce legislation I think will pass that will require all projects, development projects above a certain size, to be routinely routed over to the school district. By law, within, say, 60 days, the school district must comment in writing on what is the fiscal impact on schools of that proposed project. So that before a public hearing, before the town or county council votes on the project, everybody will know what the fiscal impact on schools will be. To approve 5,000 homes as occurred, and then have the school district tell us, then do a study, and then tell us that we need 15 schools costing $380 million is just irresponsible. And in other places, let's take Houston. First stop for developer is the school board. You don't even get to town or county council unless you get past the school board. All legislation in the state has a fiscal impact statement attached to it. All development projects, before voted on or a public hearing, should have a fiscal impact statement attached to it, not only for the cost of schools, but roads and other infrastructure. You want to get impact fees for Dorchester District 2? I'll tell you 3 ways to do it that have not been tried. Number one, the Senator Campson approach. I read in the paper Senator Campson got a month ago passed the Senate Finance Committee a bill that would allow the Isle of Palms to keep its accommodations tax to use for beach renourishment at Isle of Palms, instead of it continuing to be routed to Columbia to be routed over to Donny counties like Hampton. As Senator, I will get, through the excellent research staff, identifying all revenue streams, all taxes being paid by every citizen in Dorchester County, and identify which of those taxes are being sent to Columbia to be rerouted to Donny counties. Then I'll go to the legislators in those 6 or 7 fast-growing areas in our state and try to convince them to join together, but to, by majority vote, let us keep our own money. We just introduced legislation to say stop sending it to the rural counties for them to have a windfall and no property tax when we need the money here. That has not been tried. I'm able to just read in the paper and see that that happened.
You finish it up.
Okay. I found out from the Association of Counties last week that the state constitution allows a law to be passed specially for schools. That means we can have impact fees for Dorchester District 2 as they have in Rock Hill without it affecting the rest of the state. That means it'll be much more likely impact fees will pass if the legislation only pertains to us and the other legislators in the other parts of the state do not object. I'm going to have to end because I'm out of time, but there's much more to discuss. I urge you in conclusion to not think of this as a who knew each other first or who's related to whom contest. This is very serious business who is working for you, and you should do it on the merits of who will do the most for you. Thank you very much.